Hello! Welcome to Dunk and Egg Bricks and to part 63 of my Hogwarts MOC series. Today we're going to be extending the Hogwarts grounds by building an extra section outside of the bell towers. That's going to be the training grounds, or at least part of it, and is going to be where I'm going to relocate my first flying lesson scene to in order to make some other changes in a future update. But before we do that, we've got to go back to the bell towers here and make a few amendments. The first of those amendments is to add a couple of missing pieces, and those are two 1x10 plates in dark bluish grey. This is just because I switched up the way that the plates were arranged at the bottom of the bell towers, and I didn't happen to have these parts in my collection, so they just go there and there, and that just completes the base of it, not that it wasn't stable or anything beforehand. The next few things are also quite simple. They're just basically colour swaps. So I have got three 2x6 plates in tan, one 2x2 plate in tan, and then some tiles in, throwing them everywhere, tiles in light bluish grey. And these are going to be for the path outside. And as well as that, I've got a couple of leaves that are going to go on the front as well. So I'm going to take these off camera because I have a horrible feeling that the entire thing is going to collapse. And yeah, I may need to take some time to put it all back together. That actually wasn't as painful as it could be. Nothing exploded. You can see I've gotten the path outside in that light bluish grey, added the plant, so this will now match up to the path just outside the bell towers. And then pulling everything round, you can see all the colours are now correct. And yeah, it looks a little bit nicer. Thought the other thing I would point out before we go ahead and do the Vanishing Cabinet, a couple of the little Easter eggs that I added in. I don't think I went over these in too much detail. Obviously tried to populate this with as much stuff without it being too cluttered, so I can't place figures. But a couple of the little Easter eggs you might not be able to see is just in there. See if I can get the camera to focus. There is a batarang just there, and then of course on the floor there is a one ring. There's also a fantastic shield which I'm pretty sure comes from a Ninjago set that I got a while ago on a whim, and I finally found a place to put it, so I think that looks really nice, just secured in place with a clip. Right, next up, this isn't attached too strongly, I'm just going to snap the Fiendfire's tail off. We're going to do the Vanishing Cabinet. Now, this build is technically complete, but it contains a lot of pieces in the wrong colour, namely reddish brown. So I'm going to go through, take this completely apart, and then rebuild it step by step. So if you want to follow along and build one of these cabinets for yourself, then you can use this video as a bit of a tutorial. Here are the parts you need to build my version of the Vanishing Cabinet. I've laid them out roughly in the order that they'll be needed, so hopefully this will go together quite easily. If you do want to pause and try and look at the pieces, then please do, but I will kind of give a rough description of each one as we go through, and if it's really wanted, then I can put together a parts file and upload it to Rebrickable. Anyway, let's start off with this 3x3 wedge plate in, well, I'm not going to say in reddish brown because pretty much all the pieces in this are in reddish brown. Then we're going to add 3 of these cones on top. And then on top of these cones, we're going to add these bricks. This is a modified brick with studs on 2 adjacent sides, and then dropping it on the floor. Bricks with 2 studs on one side. So they go straight on top of there. Decided not to put another one of those wedge plates underneath because it took up too much room. Then on top of that is actually going to go another one of these wedge plates, so this helps secure everything to be together. Just careful they don't ping off in the meantime. And then on top of that is going to be corner plate and 2 1x1 plates. This just gets everything up to the right height. And then we kind of repeat a similar thing where we've got these modified bricks on top. Then another wedge plate. Then another layer of these plates on top of that. And then we repeat the pattern one final time. So essentially we end up with a bunch of studs on the side, each separated by 2 layers of plate. And this basically means we can have the plates attached on the side at the right distance apart. Then on top of that, we break the pattern and we just go straight for 2 of these corner plates, 2x2 corner plates, and then a final modified brick on the top. These bricks in reddish brown with the 2 studs on adjacent sides are a little bit pricey at the moment, but they really are the best bricks for this situation. Now around the back things don't look fantastic, and I did go backwards and forwards on this, trying to find a way that would make the back look good as well. But then at the end of the day, it's just going to sit in the corner of the room of requirement and you're never going to see the back. So I thought, what's the point? Let's not bother. Right, so that's the core finished. Let's move on to the exterior, make it all look nice. So first of all, we'll get 2 of these modified 1x4 plates with 2 studs, and they go on the outer edges on either side. Then we've got 2 1x3 tiles, which go down at the bottom. Careful to get them on the right stud hole. There we go. And the same for this side. And then 2 1x2 tiles. Finish off that length there, just push that one down, make sure everything lines up nicely. Then down the middle, we're going to be using these flat silver modified grill tiles, and they just go out the middle. They're only secured by 1 stud each, but that's all they need to stay in place. And that's just basically going to represent where the 2 doors come together. It might take a little bit of maneuvering to get them all nicely lined up straight, but they look pretty decent for the moment. Then we're going to be adding 4 of these modified bar pieces. These are just in light bluish grey because they don't come in a silver colour, but I think it's a decent enough match. And these just represent the hinges of the cabinet, and they're just going to go on these exposed studs that we've left. Just make sure that they are nice and straight. They look pretty good. And then the final piece is just to make the kind of peak at the top are 2 different types of modified 45-degree tiles. These ones with a smaller cutout, and they go on the lower section, one there and one there. And then finally at the very top, we've got these kind of 2x2 diagonal half tiles, and they go on the top, and they create your peak. And they, well, pretty much come together. There's a tiny, tiny little gap just because of Lego piece tolerances. But there we go. There is our Vanishing Cabinet. So let's get that positioned into the room. Try not to knock off the Fiendfire's tail yet again. So we'll just sneak it in like that. And that is its position. And we'll just try and press it down without knocking it over too much. I'll go back in and I'll fix that up in future. But there we go. That is our second part of the room of requirement actually now finished, and we can finally move on to what this video is actually supposed to be about. So we've moved from inside the bell towers to just outside them. This is the gatehouse, and at the moment this is where the castle ends. This is as far as I built up to. But actually when I reorganised the Lego room, the spare room, when we completely redid it, and I moved things onto the IKEA Billy shelves, the first half of Hogwarts going from the Great Hall over to the Viaduct entrance building, that all fit on one shelf and the other half all fit on the other, but there was a bit of space left over. What I've decided to do is I'm actually going to be changing what is inside here, and that's going to be in a future video. At the moment, as you can see, I've got the first flying lesson set up with the minifigs for Madam Hooch, students, and then Neville there with his Remember-All. Now, I put it here because it was the space that I had available, but if it's going to be a little bit more accurate, it really needs to be just outside the wall in an area that's known as the training grounds. Now, this is an odd area because it's effectively part of Alnwick Castle, which is where they filmed the live action bits. And yeah, they combined that into the model of Hogwarts like they did with lots of other locations where they actually went and filmed at real places around Britain. But then in later films they moved away from that a little bit, and as there were so many changes around the castle, bits and pieces of the training grounds were changed or disappeared. But I think that I'm just going to be fine capturing a small part of them, and it really is going to be small. It's only going to be 14 studs wide, and I'm going to be continuing the kind of rock face across the front. So I'm going to be using a big ugly rock piece or a burp, and then I'm going to be using all of these pieces to continue this lawn design, and it's actually going to be a bit longer than this because there's another corner bit that fits on. I'll put it all back together at the end so that you can see what's going on. Now, it's not going to be a particularly interesting build. It is literally just going to be a series of plates and then some rocks on the end, and also I'm going to need to go through and invent a way of holding everything up using these bricks here, or rather using some similar bricks from my collection. So I'm going to do that all off camera and then show you what the result is. And then I've got one other small build, which is just a bit of kind of set decoration that I'm going to put together for you, and then we'll set up the flying lesson outside the walls as it should be. Right, there we go, that's something. It's not particularly elegant or anything like that, but it does work, and you'll only ever be seeing it from this kind of angle anyway. So this just matches up here, and the path connects there and just carries on. And like I said, this bit is where the corner of the wall is, so that carries off across a different piece. Now, I said I was going to go ahead and create another build to put in this video, and that's actually going to be inspired by one of the first LEGO Harry Potter sets that I ever got. And that set was set number 4711, Flying Lesson. This has to be one of the first Harry Potter sets I collected. It came out in 2002, and it really was one of those kind of pocket money sets that you can get, or allowance if you prefer. You know, just a little cheap set, which according to Brickset at least retailed for $2.99 when it first came out. With only 23 pieces, you really don't see many sets that size. And the reason that I wanted to look back at this is obviously it's representing the same scene with Malfoy stealing the Remember-All, but part of it was a kind of cart to hold the brooms. Now, this doesn't come from the film or the book or anything like that, but it was just a nice little addition, and I thought it was a little something extra. So the original one was fairly blocky and fairly simple. So what I've gone ahead and done is created my own version, which again is still relatively simple, if it'll focus. There we go, still relatively simple, but uses these larger wagon wheels and makes use of some newer pieces like these curved slopes, inverted curved slopes to hold everything together on the bottom. Still only holds 2 brooms, one in reddish brown and one in black, but I thought it was a nice little addition. At the moment, I'm not actually using anything to keep it in place. I'm just going to literally pop it down, and it'll hopefully sit there. So yeah, that'll just be in the background of the scene, and it helps to fill this space, because this space in front is where I am going to put the flying lesson. So I think it's time we transferred over Madam Hooch. Can go at the head there. And then we've got Hermione to one side, and she's having a lot of trouble getting her broom to actually come up. And then over the other side, I have got Neville. And he is not having quite as much trouble with his broom, but he's going to be having a lot of trouble with Malfoy in a minute. And there is Malfoy, complete with an appropriate black broom. Harry, who has clearly managed to do his job and get his broom into his hand. And then Ron, who I've done my best to make it look like he's whacking himself in the head with said broom. So this can then be pushed to one side, and I can reuse that space for something else, see if you can guess what it is in the comments below. So there we go, there is the first flying lesson properly set up, and I'm a lot happier with that. Very happy with the little cart in the background. I may need to put in a couple of cheese wedges or something like that just to keep it in place. And yeah, very happy with how that's going. Time to get both this and the other part over into the castle, and we can see the effect. And there it is in place, just finishing off that little bit on the side there. Annoyingly, these shelves are approximately 95 studs wide, which anyone who knows anything about Lego maths will know is a very irritating number, because it's 1 stud off 96, which would be exactly 3 32 base plates, 32 stud wide base plates, I should say, along. So if you want to put modulars on these, you're going to have fun. But I've actually gone for 94 total, just to make the maths easier, because Lego works better in even numbers. So there's a tiny little gap down the side, but it does fit really nicely. Lighting's a bit poor, but hopefully you can see everything there. So there is the flying lesson in place. You can see the path continues all the way where we changed it outside the bell towers, all the way through and into wherever it goes off that side. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to be filling in these spaces just here, see if you can guess what it is, hint hint. And then yeah, leaves me a little bit of free space if I want to add some more students or any more details outside. So there we go, that is the current state of the castle, looking over from left to right. And yeah, it takes up a huge amount of space, but it's really worth it. Next, I will be working on the rocks underneath the what's this called? Clock tower, that's what it's called, clock tower, and the courtyard there, working my way across, introducing some extra bits and pieces. And yeah, this is where we are now. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, then please leave a like or a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Take a guess at what I'm going to be putting in there. Subscribe to the channel for future updates, because there will be more coming quite soon. In the meantime, have a good one.